this is how I'm going to start. I'm just going to zoom out. I'm just going to make a quick copy of this so I can refer to the copy as I'm building on top of the other one. So I'm just going to come into the layers and I'm just going to just lock the layer up. I'll just call it ref and click OK. Right. So hopefully with the Illustrator effects I'm going to create some nice artwork, but I'm also going to use the Illustrator effects to help me build the effects. So I'm going to start by building this shield here. So I just need to create myself a new layer, and I'll just call it something like drawings. And I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw half the shield. So as I draw the left side of the shield, I want Illustrator to create me the right side. So sometimes when you're making things that are symmetrical, it's not always easy to see what it's going to look like until you've got both sides. So I want Illustrator to create me the other side. So it's kind of doing half the work in a way. So I've just got a shape. I'm just going to give it a colour, something like this. And when you're creating effects, one of the best panels is the Appearance panel. So I'm just going to grab the Appearance panel. So I've got the shape selected, and I'm making sure that for the shape here, I've got the fill selected, because I'm going to reflect the fill onto the other side. And I'm going to click FX here at the bottom, come into Distort and Transform, and I'm going to choose Transform. So for this rectangle, this blue rectangle, I want it to reflect from the right-hand side. So I'm going to come down to this kind of little reference point here, and just click on one of these tiny little boxes on the right-hand side, which would represent the right-hand side of this rectangle. I'll just turn the preview on, so nothing's happening at the moment. I need to make one copy, so I'm copying the rectangle, and I need to reflect it over to the right-hand side. You can see now I've got essentially duplicate over on the right-hand side. So I'm going to click OK. And this is basically how it's going to work. So the rectangle we've got on the left is the vector shape, and on the right-hand side is the effect. So if I come in and grab the Direct Selection tool, and I'll just kind of click away, and if I come to a corner, you can see as I modify it on one side, it reflects it over on the other side. So it's going to help me to create the shield nice and quick. Now, just so I can see the original reference image, I'm just going to click back on the rectangle and just drop the opacity down a bit so I can now see the sketch. So I'm just going to come in and match the corners like so. For the bottom left corner here, I'm just going to remove it. So I can grab the Delete Anchor Point tool, click on that bottom corner there. So get in there. Just to let you know, if I grab the white selection tool, the direct selection tool, and come over to the right hand side, I can't select it because it's an effect based on the left side that I'm creating. So I'm just going to come back here, and if I grab the anchor point tool, what I can now start to do is come in and I can start to curve these lines to create my shield. So a nice kind of quick way of making something that's symmetrical, and as I'm creating it I can also see what it's going to look like as a whole instead of just doing one side at a time. So I can really tweak it. And you could use this for kind of different ways of drawing. I could have drawn with the pen tool, I could have drawn the left side of the shield with the pen tool first and then use the transform and reflect it. And what is nice about effects in Illustrator is they're always editable. Now you can see here, this is the transform that I set up when I reflected it. So I can either hide it, oops, I just need the shape selected first. So I can either hide it, and the right hand side goes away, or I could click back on the transform, come back in and change all the settings. Okay, and I'm going to be doing a bit more of this later, so you'll see me change a few options. Now, let me just tweak that a little bit more. I'm just going to come in and do that. Right, so I've now got the shape I'm after, and if I just refer over to my initial sketch here, what I want to do next is create an inner line that goes kind of slightly inside the shield shape. So to create this effect, what I now need to do is to convert the right hand side, which is the effect, over to a vector, and then I can join the two sides together. Because this kind of inner effect I won't be able to create with this effect. So what I'm going to do is just click on this shape. I'll just put the opacity back up to 100%, and then if I come up to Object and down to Expand Appearance, it's going to now convert the right hand side to a vector. Okay, and you will be able to see that if I grab the direct selection tool, I can actually go in and now modify, both sides if I wished. So I'm just going to undo that. So now I'm going to select both sides, and kind of one of the perhaps the most useful kind of tools in Illustrator is the Pathfinder tool or panel. Here's my Pathfinder panel, and that allows you to combine two or more selected objects together in different ways. So I'm just going to now click on here to unite the two sides, and it's joined it together. So I've now got the full shape that I'm after. So I'm now going to start working on this inner line. So I've got the shield shape selected, and if I come in here into the appearance panel and I'm going to add a stroke, I'll just make it nice and bright so you can see it. I'll just go for red for now, and I'll just increase the thickness so you can see it. So at the moment the line is on the edge of the shape, but I need to bring it in. So using another effect, so I'm going to select the stroke, come down to FX here at the bottom, and if I come into path, I can offset the path, which basically allows me to move the stroke off the edge of the shield. So I'm going to offset the path, click on preview. Okay, at the moment you can see it's going outside of the shield, so I just need to give it a negative value, and then it will start to go inside the shield. And now I'm just going to kind of make the negative value bigger, bring that in a bit more, click OK, and again this is all editable. So you can see here it's put the offset effect. So I can come back in, change it, hide it, and that would put it back as it was. So I'm just going to change the color of this stroke. I'll set it back over to white, and I think I'll make it a little bit thinner. So basically this kind of inner line is based on the overall shape, which basically means that if I was to adjust the overall shape, it will follow the shape. So it's very flexible. Instead of having like two objects where you'd have to try and modify both of them, it's nice and easy. So let's start looking at the text next. And I'm after creating this long shadow. So I wanted to generate this long shadow. So I'm just going to come over here. I'll just grab the type tool and I'll just click. I'm just going to type in 6. Okay, let's make it nice and big. I'm using a keyboard shortcut at the moment. I'm pressing Command Shift and the greater than symbol. And if I hold down the Alt key as well, it gets bigger quicker. And then I'm just going to change the font. Okay, something like Cooper. And I'll just move that over. And I'm just going to stretch it. So I'm going to guess something like that. Right, so depending on how you select the text depends on if you can apply an effect or not. So if I've got the text selected with the black selection tool, I can see that in my appearance panel I can add a fill or a stroke to it. But if I select the text with the type tool, you'll see that those options are not available. So I need to select it with the black selection tool basically. So what I'm going to do while I'm here, and I've got the text selected, I'm going to get rid of its kind of default fill of black. I'm just going to set that to none. So I've now got basically text that has no fill. So what I'm now going to do with the text selected with the black selection tool, I'm going to come over and add a fill in. So if I click on here, it's going to add a new fill, which is black. And I'll just change that to some kind of yellow color. I think it would look good. And now I'm going to add a second fill to my number just by clicking down here again. So I've got two yellow fills at the moment, and I'm going to come to the bottom fill and I'll make this black. So this is going to be my shadow, the start of my shadow. So just to show you, I can see the yellow fill at the moment because that's the top fill in the appearance panel. If I was to hide it, I would see the black fill underneath. So I've got two fills going on. And it's the bottom fill that I'm going to make into the shadow. So I've got the bottom fill selected, which is the black fill. I'm going to click on FX at the bottom, and just to let you know, another way to get into the effects is to come up to the effect menu. You can choose it from here as well, but I always tend to use the appearance panel to do it. So I'm going to come down to FX, Distort and Transform, click on transform, and I'll just turn the preview on so we can see what's happening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move my black fill slightly to the right and slightly downwards. So to move it to the right, I'm just going to give it a small value. I'm just going to go for 1 pixel. That will move it to the right, 1 pixel downwards. Okay, I'll just press the tab key, and you might just be able to see it kind of poking through at the moment. So what I'm now going to do is make lots of copies of them. So if I just type in here for copies, I'll just type in 100. So what I've now done, I've made 100 copies of the black fill, and each copy has been moved by 1 pixel, and that creates me my long shadow. So I just need to do it a little bit more. I just need a few more copies. So I'm just going to highlight the number. I'm just pressing the up arrow key. Okay, so I've now got my shadow. So you can obviously adjust these distances. So perhaps if it did need to be a bit smoother, you could reduce this value. So it could be lower than 1 pixel. I'm just going to keep it at 1 pixel. So this is the effect really I'm after. If I come back in with the type tool, okay, I just need to click OK there. Come back in with the type tool, and I select that number and I change it. The shadow automatically updates. Nice flexible effect. So I'll just put that back to 6. Right, so now I need to make the shadow a little bit more convincing. I want to see some of the blue from the shield coming through. So if I toggle open the black fill, I can see the opacity for it. Click on opacity, and if I change the blending mode to multiply and then drop the opacity down, you can see that it's blending the black with the blue to create this kind of darker blue color. And that means that if the shield color ever changed, let's click back on the shield and change that color, you know, the shadow would still work. Okay, so I don't need to actually give the shadow a color. So I'll just put that to a blue color. So what I'm now going to do, let me just drop the opacity a little bit. There's my number. Just make it a bit bigger. And then I can just copy that, and I'll just make the T and the H. And again, it's just generating that shadow kind of all by itself. Let's stick that over there. Okay. Now, because it's an effect, what I can also do is create a graphic style from it. And that would allow me to apply the style to something else. So if I select this, I can come over to the graphic styles panel, and I'm just going to hold down the Alt key. This would allow me to name it. If I click on the new graphic style icon, I'll just call it long shadow. Okay, click OK, and you can now see in the graphic styles panel it's saved that. So if I was to create something else like that, I can click on the graphic style and it would apply it to wherever I've got selected. Now, if I just undo that, you can see that this rectangle is black at the moment, but when I click on here, it changes it to yellow. It's kind of really following that graphic style. But if I did want to keep the original color, if I just undo that, if I hold down the Alt key and click on the graphic style, it will preserve the original color of the graphic, but still apply the shadow. So I've got kind of lots of flexibility to apply it to objects of different colors. Just let me remove that. So in terms of my long shadow, it's done. Apart from that, the shadow is going over the edge of the shield. So I just need to fix that. So I'll just quickly put the shield back up to 100% opacity. Okay, so you can see the color there. And what I'm going to do is create something called a clipping mask to hide the bits of the shadow I don't want. So if I click on the shield, I'm going to copy it just by pressing Command C, and then I'm going to paste it in place by going up to Edit, Paste in Place. And what Paste in Place does, it pastes it in exactly the same location right at the very top of everything. So I'll paste it in place, and just so we can kind of differentiate between them, I'll just make it green. So I've got a green shield on top of my text and my blue shield. The way a clipping mask works is the top shape is going to be the mask, in my case my green shield, and my shadows, my text, is going to be masked by this green shield. So I'm going to select the text next. So a nice way of doing it is, because the text is underneath the shield, a bit tricky to get, I can come up to View, Outline. I can now see the text, so I can shift click, select the text as well. So I've got the green shield selected and I've got the text selected underneath it. And if I just come back up to View, Preview, okay, so I've got three things selected there, and then I'm going to come up to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. Green shield becomes the mask and it masks my shadows. And you'll notice that the green shield has lost its colours. It's actually gone essentially transparent. And so it's basically there. Right, excellent. So what I'm just going to do next is start working on the shield, on the ribbon, sorry. I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool. I'll just draw it a little bit further down here, and I'm going to make it a nice bright red colour. And just before I start making this little ribbon, I just want to show you something that's really handy in Illustrator. So if you've got a colour that you definitely know you want, like this red here, and you want to pick other colours that will work with that colour. So I've got this colour selected. I can come over to the colour guide panel, and you can see my red colour there, and the colour guide panel will suggest colours that will work with that colour. So, you know, if I go for something like Triad 2, which is quite bright contrasting colours, I'll click on that. Okay. And then I can add these colours into my swatches panel by clicking on this icon here. So it's sent the colours over to here, and now I could go in, I'll just do it with the blue shield. So I need to be a little bit careful. I do have the blue shield selected because I've got lots of stuff on top. It's in here somewhere. So what I'm going to do, just to dig down, I'll just move that out of the way. So I can select it there, and then I could see if that blue colour that Illustrator suggested is better than my colour. Not much difference there. Okay. So I'll just put that back. Cool. So yeah, it's really useful, that the colour guide panel, when you're struggling to pick colours, you know, you choose one and get Illustrator to suggest some other colours. So let's have a look at the ribbon. So this ribbon, it would be a little bit more difficult to create as it is in the sketch. So I'm going to create it just out of kind of flat rectangles, and then I'll get Illustrator to kind of make it wavy like this for me. So I'm just going to go in and copy that, just using the Alt key. I'm going to make that smaller. So I'm making these little bits at the end, like a bit like a snake's tongue. And then I'm going to come over here, grab the Add Anchor Point tool. If I zoom in, this will allow me to add an extra anchor point down the side, which will give me another way of controlling the shape. And then going over to this Direct Selection tool, I can just pull it in, and that will give me the shape I'm after. Now I want this red bit here to be a little bit darker than what it is at the moment. So if I come back over to the colour guide panel, and I will click on the red colour here to bring it to the front, and then Illustrator will automatically create some shades of that colour, essentially different darkened versions of it. And then that's going to be good. I can put that over there, and I'll just send it to the back by right clicking, Arrange, Send to the back. Okay, so it's going to put that over there, something like that. And then I'm going to reflect it over to the other side to create the other one. So with this one selected, I'm going to grab the Reflect tool. If I put my cursor in the center, okay, hopefully it tells me where the center is, here, I can hold down the Alt key and click. Oops, let me check that again. Hold down the Alt key and click. So I'm reflecting over on the vertical axis. With the preview one, I can see it's going into the right place, and then I can just copy it. So put it on both sides. So essentially by Alt clicking, I've told it where the line of symmetry was, so it knows where to reflect it from. Right, let's do the text next. So I'm going to grab the type tool. I'm going to click. I can see the text is going to be massive. So let me just go for a smaller size. And I'll type in designers Fiesta. Select that. I'll make it white. And I'll just make it a bit bigger. I'll change. Yeah, I've already made it white. Let me change the font. So I'll go for one called Super Clarendon. Center that up. What I'm going to do next is select every part of this ribbon. And then I'm going to group it. So the reason I'm grouping it is I want the effect to apply to the overall thing. If I just selected it, every bit and applied an effect, it will apply the effect to each piece individually. But I want the effect to be to the whole ribbon. So I've grouped it, and now I'm going to add an effect. So over in the Appearance panel, I'm going to click FX at the bottom. I'm going to come down to Warp, and I'll just choose Arc for now, just so you get an idea what it's going to do. And then you can now see it's going to warp it, and I have control of this effect. And the one I'm really after is the kind of the flag one. And then I can just adjust it to roughly what I want. Click OK, and then I can move that into place. And again, I've got kind of full control if I want the effect or not. And I can always come in and make any changes anytime I like. Right, so that's the first bit of artwork done. Some nice use of effects there. And I'm going to just come down to the next artboard. Right, so for this one, I'm going to create a little icon, and I'm going to create another long shadow effect, but this time I want to apply a gradient to the shadow, instead of just having it like a continuous tone. So I'm just going to come in, using the rounded rectangle tool. This will be like the background to the icon. And I'm just using either the up or down arrow keys to adjust the roundness. Like so, and I'll just pick a color. Let's go for, I don't know, let's go for that one. I'll change that. And now I'm going to actually draw the icon. So I'm going to go for a drawing pin. Okay, probably doesn't sound too exciting, but let's have a go. So this is going to be the top of the drawing pin. And if I look around the corners, I can see the anchor points. And the anchor points would allow me to change the shape. Okay, but what I want to do is have some anchor points on both sides, and then I can pull those anchor points in. So one way to do it is to come up to the object menu, down to path, and if I add some anchor points, you will now see it's put them around the edges. So I'm after selecting this anchor point and that anchor point. So I'm using my white selection tool. I'm going to click and drag through the anchor points to select them. And then I'm just going to hit my S key on my keyboard. That will get me the scale tool, as you can see there. And then what I can now do is pull them in. Okay. And then I'm just going to use my arrow key to nudge them down. So next I'm going to give them some rounded corners. So I've got the corner controls here. I can just come in, round them. Let's select that anchor point there, that anchor point there. I'll just round those a bit. Okay, select these two as well. Let's round that. And I think I'm going to go with kind of an orangey colour perhaps. Okay, so that's going to be the top of the drawing pin. And next I'm going to draw a rectangle. So just hit the M key there to get the rectangle tool. So this is going to be the pointy bit. And I'll just make it grey. And then I can grab this tool here, the delete anchor point tool. Click on a corner, that gives me the point. And then using that direct selection tool again, I can just move that corner over. So there's my drawing pin. Right, I'm going to select that and group it. by pressing Command G. I'm just going to move that over. Okay, so perhaps I need to tweak those colours a bit, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. Okay, put it there. Okay. Right, so in our first example, we applied a drop shadow to like one object, the text. Now that I've got two objects as a group, it's going to work slightly different. So I'm going to select my group, and if you look in the appearance panel, you can see it says here group, and then the contents. So this is the contents of the group. So I'm going to add a fill to there. Okay, so it's added me a black fill, and that's going on top of my drawing pin, if you like. So I need to move the black fill down below the contents. So now my black fill is underneath, which is going to be the basis of my shadow. And then I'm going to come into FX, and as we did with the last one, I'm going to transform it. I'll just go with, I'm actually going to make this a lot bigger than the last one. Let's go with 5 pixels by 5 pixels. Okay, and I can see what I didn't do is select the black fill. So I need to come back out of here, make sure I've got the black fill selected, then go back in and just do that again. So on the preview, now it's working, and I'll guess, I don't know, let's go for about 50 copies. So it's just going to repeat it. So you can actually see what it's doing now a bit clearer. It's repeating that black fill multiple times, and it's creating this almost like kind of saw blade effect here. And I want that to happen, because what I'm going to do with this shape is tidy this bit up, and then I'm going to create my shadow from it. But I just need to make a backup before I do that. I'm going to copy this over. That's going to be my backup. I'll just turn off the black fill. I'm going to come back to this one. Now I'm going to intentionally make this kind of effect look worse. Let's come back in, and I'll even increase this a lot more. Let's go for something like 10 by 10. Right, and then I'll just reduce the copies just so it's just hanging over this kind of brown rectangle. Let me try something like 10. Maybe a few more. Good. So that's just what I'm after. Click OK. And just before I do the next step, I just want to show you it is a live effect. So if I was to change the drawing pin rotation, it updates. Right, so this is the bit where I have to kind of bin my effect to achieve the next bit. And so what I'm going to do is come up to Object. I'm going to expand the appearance. And then using Pathfinder, I'm going to merge all these together. So I'll get that kind of effect. And then now I need to do a little bit tidying up. So I need to remove most of these pointy bits here, which is created using anchor points. So I'm going to grab my lasso tool, and I'm going to select most of them, apart from the ones that are right on the corners. So I'm just going to come in there, select those. Okay. And just making sure I've got nothing else selected that I don't want. I'm just going to delete or remove those anchor points. Okay, so I'm just tidying it up, and I'll just get most of these as well. So removing those, removing most of those. Okay, so that should be good. And then now I'm going to apply a gradient to this. So the easiest way to apply a gradient in Illustrator is hit the full stop key. So if I press the full stop key, it gives me a gradient. And then if I press the G key, that will give me the gradient tool. And I think I'll need to drag in that kind of direction. Okay. Alright, so you'll get a better idea when I put my backup copy on top. Just need to rotate that round to match. Move that over. Right, so you can see the effect, and all I'm going to do now to the gradient is to come into the transparency panel. A bit like the last shadow, I'm going to set it to multiply, drop its opacity down a bit, and that will create my shadow. And again, it doesn't matter if I come in and change that background color now. The shadow will work. Yeah, so let's go for a color. Yuck. I don't know. I'll leave it on that. So what I now need to do is hide this bit of the shadow. And I want to kind of show you a different way of doing it. It will still create a clipping mask, but it's a different way of doing it. So I'll just kind of illustrate this before I use it on my icon. So if I grab the ellipse tool and I just draw an ellipse, and then what I'm going to do is change the drawing mode for that shape. So with the shape selected, I'm going to come down here. You can see here, it's by default it's set to draw normal, but I'm going to set it to draw inside. And you'll notice that the shape has like little kind of dashed corners to it now. And if I grab the pen tool, and I'll just click away from the shape. So I've got my pen tool, I'm going to go with yellow. Okay, you'll notice that if I start to draw over here, nothing happens. Only when I go over the shape, anything that is drawn inside that shape is visible. So that's what draw inside does. So, you have to be quite careful with this because I made that ellipse shape to draw inside. If I was to draw somewhere else, like out here, I wouldn't see it. Often when you finish, you've got to make sure you're back in the normal view, or you'll be drawing and never seeing anything. So that's what I'm going to do with my icon here. So I'm going to select the shadow plus the drawing pin. I'm going to cut it, Command X, click on this shape, change its drawing mode to draw inside, and then if I do an edit, paste in place, it will paste it back into the shape and the shadow is automatically clipped. And then before I forget, I'm going to change the drawing mode back over to the normal way of drawing in my next drawing. Right, just to let you know, the reason I didn't use that technique on the shield here is because if I did it to the shield, and because it has this kind of internal line, it would lose the internal line. So that's why I didn't use it for the shield, but because this shape is simpler, there's no problem with that. Right. Illustrator is really good at creating these kind of perfect, almost like clinical images. So what I want to do next is create some artwork that's kind of all messed up, kind of like a worn out effect. So I'm just going to come in and just draw a quick kind of mountain. So I'm just going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to go with kind of a brownish kind of color. And I'm just going to come in, draw a quick mountain. Zoom in a bit. Some snow peaks. Something like that would be good. It's a very kind of stylized look, and I'm just going to give it some text. And let's put in there. Let's put in there hikers. Just make that a bit bigger. Move that down, and then I'm going to just grab the eyedropper tool, click on the color there to pick it up. So there's my little icon, and because I need this icon for the next exercise as well, I'm just going to select it and copy it down into the last artboard. Right. What I need to do to the text, I'm going to be using Pathfinder to do this next effect, and the text needs to be vectors for it to work. So I'm going to convert the text to outlines. So I can just do a right click and create outlines. Okay, so you can now see all the anchor points. The mountain is already vectors, so I don't need to do anything special with that. Right, so the way I'm going to mess it up is use something that's often referred to as a grunge map. And a grunge map is it's essentially an image that's based of often nature. So someone will go out and take a picture of like concrete, stone, or something like that. And then in Photoshop, they often kind of increase the contrast and really bring out some of the texture. And you end up with like a black and white image. So I'm just going to bring one of those in. I'm going to do a file place. I'm going to bring in this one here that I've already got. So just drag that out. So there it is. And you can see if I zoom in at the moment, it's basically it's a pixel-based image. So I need to vectorize that. Okay. But just before I do that, I need to. I'm just going to select these snow peaks, and I'm just going to move those over here. So I didn't need to copy those, just delete those. Okay. Right, so I'm going to move the mess over my artwork here. I'm just making sure there's not too much mess over my text because I do want that text to still be legible after it's finished. Right, so now I need to convert this image from a pixel-based image to a vector-based image. So with the image selected, I can just click on Image Trace, and I'm just going to let Illustrator run the kind of default method of tracing. Cool. Right, and if I just zoom in now, you can see it's a bit different, it's a bit more vectorized. Now, one thing it has done, which I didn't want it to do, is added a white background in. So if I come up here to the Image Trace panel, click on there, and I toggle open the Advanced section in this Image Trace panel, I can tell it here to ignore the white. Okay. And I'll just give it a second to think about it. Right, good. I end up with exactly what I wanted, just a mess and not a white background. So I'll just close the Image Trace panel. Now, what it is basically at the moment, it is a vector graphic, the mess, but Illustrator doesn't quite see it as vector just yet. With the image still selected, I need to expand it. And now I can see all the anchor points, and that makes it into a vector graphic. Right, and what I'm going to do with my mess selected, I'm just going to give it a color that I haven't used in my artwork. I'm going to give it this maybe bright pink color here. And that will just make it easier for me to set later on because I haven't used that pink color in any of my other artwork. I can select this pink knowing that I won't select any other bit of my artwork. So there it is there. There's my mess, a nice pink splodge. I'm just going to copy that over onto my snow peaks. Yeah. Right. So now what I'm going to do is to select this and come back over to Pathfinder. So what I want to basically happen is I want the mess to merge into my artwork, into my logo. And where my logo is underneath the mess, it's going to delete the logo and the mess will be in its place. And then I'll just delete the mess and I'll have bits of my logo missing. Hopefully it'll create a kind of a worn out effect. So I'm going to make sure I've got all this selected. In my Pathfinder panel, I'm going to click on the merge button, which is here at the bottom. Right. So when you use Pathfinder, it groups things. So I just need to ungroup it. Alright, so if I look at it at the moment, no real difference. But if I grab the Magic Wand tool, click on this mess. Now at the moment it's selecting the other one because it's the same color. So I'm just using the selection tool, and if I hold down the Shift key, I can just drag around this bit here to deselect it. I can just see it's got my snow peaks, so I'm just going to shift click on those as well. Okay. Right, so I've got just the mess selected, and if I delete the mess, I now got this kind of artwork that looks a bit worn out and kind of messy. Just getting away from the kind of pristine look that Illustrator creates. Now I'm going to repeat the same process to my snow caps. Select those. merge them together. Okay, I'm going to ungroup. Okay, and then you grab the magic wand tool, select those, and delete. So there's my snow cap, okay, worn out. Now, when you use the merge option here, sometimes it leaves kind of messy bits all over the place. So I'm just going to make sure it's not doing that. So if I come up to View, Outline, I can see all these little messy bits here that's been left behind. Using the magic wand tool, I'm just going to select those. These little shapes here that it's got selected are kind of invisible. It's got no fill, no stroke, but I need to be careful because I know that my clipping mask also is invisible. And if I was to delete now, it would delete my clipping mask. So just going back over to the selection tool, I just need to click on my clipping mask, and then I can just delete those little messy bits that Illustrator left behind. Alright, let's go back up to View, Preview, so we can see the artwork. And now I just need to move the snow peak back over here. And then I've got my nice kind of tatty looking kind of worn out logo. So it just makes it a bit different. And you know, that's the kind of thing that most people would perhaps do in Photoshop, but because it's vector, you know, we can resize it and make it any size we like. So that's the good thing about working with vectors. So my last example, I'm going to show you how to create a kind of a live reflection using this logo. I'm going to select all this, and I think what I'll do, just to make it easy to work with, I'm going to group it. Just press Command G or right click and group. Right, so I've got it grouped, and I think I'll just make it a little bit smaller, so it's definitely going to fit on with the reflection. So I've got it selected, and again, back into the appearance panel, I can click on FX, distort and transform, or transform it again. I'm going to turn on the preview. I want to reflect it from the bottom. So coming down to this little icon here, just need to click here to represent my bottom edge of my artwork. And this time it's going to be kind of reflected upside down, so that's on the Y direction. So I'm going to choose Reflect Y. And number of copies I need is 1. So I'll end up with the original plus the reflection. Now there's a bit of a gap between it, and that's all to do with this kind of, it thinks the bottom edge of my artwork is right down here. So all I need to do is come into the vertical option and just kind of nudge it up. And I think that's going to be pretty close. Okay, I might actually leave a little gap in between it. Okay, I'm just going to highlight that number actually and just use my arrow keys to nudge it. Right, so I'll just leave a little gap on purpose, but at any time I can change it. So I'm going to click OK. Right, so basically this is a live reflection, because if I come in using the direct selection tool, I can come in, modify it, and you'll see it updates at the bottom. So I've got, you know, complete control over it. But at the moment it doesn't look like a real reflection, because a real reflection would fade away. So what I'm going to add next to it is something called an opacity mask, and you can control how strong things are in terms of opacity and transparency. So if I come to the reflected artwork, and I just need to basically cover it up with a shape. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle over it. Just kind of nudge it down a bit. And I'm going to fill it with a gradient. So I'm just going to press the full stop key to fill it with a gradient. And then using the gradient tool by hitting the G key, I'm going to have the gradient. Let's have a look. Yeah, start at white at the top, go down to black at the bottom. So the way an opacity mask basically works is where you've got the shape as white, if I just move that over a bit, where the shape is white, it's going to show the artwork underneath. Where it's black, it's going to hide the artwork. Okay, and where it's 50%, it's going to be kind of half visible, half hidden. So let me just move that back. Just making sure I'm covering it. And then I'm going to select all the artwork plus the rectangle that has the gradient. And then what I can now do is come over into the transparency panel. Let's drag it over here so you can see it. And I'm going to click on Make Mask. So you might just be able to see on the screen that here it's quite strong, where the gradient was white, and then it's fading down to black. One thing you'll probably notice that my original mountain has disappeared. And the reason for that is because it wasn't underneath the white of that rectangle. I can't see it at the moment. So what I need to do in my transparency panel is I just need to turn this option off here, which is clip, and anything that is outside of that gradient will be visible. So I've got my original mountain back. And then what I want to do here is I want to just tweak how quickly the reflection fades away. So you can see here in the transparency panel, I've got my original artwork, and here's my gradient. So if I click on the gradient, it selects that rectangle that had the gradient on. I'll just press the G key to bring up, this is the thing here called the gradient annotator. And you'll see here, if I move the black up, the bottom of the mountain is kind of fading away. Now if I move it kind of right up here, a bit further than halfway up, you might just be able to see the mountain still down here. I can see it on my screen. You can't see it too well there. You might just see a hint of it. So the black isn't fully hiding it. So what I'm going to do to that black here, this little black color stopper, I'm going to double click on it. So I can see it's a black just made out of kind of one color. But if I come into the little menu and change it to RGB, that black will be made out of 3 colors, like a composite black. And now it's a lot stronger the way it works. So you can see here. So basically I can't see the mountain any further down than where the black is now, where the black color stopper is. What I'm going to do to the white here, I'm just going to come to the white color stopper, double click on that. I want the top of my reflection a little bit weaker. So instead of having it as pure white, I'm going to just go into the greys. You'll see here if I whack it really far, it completely disappears. Don't want to do that. Just down a little bit. Right, so there is my reflection. So if you're ever thinking about doing an opacity mask, one of the important things to remember at the end, once you've gone in and you've changed it, at the moment I'm still working on my gradient here, and the important thing here is to come back to your artwork. And if you don't do that, Illustrator won't work the way you expect. So you have to always come back to your artwork, click on there, and then we've got that. So most of the stuff there is live. If I adjust the mountain at the top, my reflection will update. Even if I do it now and adjust this, you can see that the snow peak is still adjusting. Cool. So that's my last effect. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of how to use Illustrator, maybe different ways of using it. The appearance panel is a really powerful little panel. I've only used a few effects in there, but yeah, dig around, you can create some kind of amazing artwork. And the most important thing about the artwork is that most of the time you can keep your effects and it's still editable. Okay, so you can kind of make changes, and if your client wants to change, the boss wants to change, if it's effect based, it's easy to make that change. You just go into the appearance panel with the item selected, find the effect, click on it, and it opens up and you can change it. So thank you very much for coming to this session.